As I mentioned before, this is a webinar discussing options for international talent for film and TV and also theatre and stage performances. Okay. I hope everybody can see my screen. Okay, just a disclaimer that this is general information. It's not specific legal advice. If you do want kind of specific legal advice, please reach out to an attorney, either our firm or somebody else, and they can kind of discuss options specific to your circumstances. Okay. And again, timelines are, general estimations. As with a lot of immigration law, they change. They often change. It can depend on caseloads, capacity, and so forth. So they kind of, the regular processing times regularly change, and also attorney preparation times too. Depends on capacity. Okay, a little bit about us. We are an immigrant-founded immigration law firm, full-service immigration law, family, business, employment, entertainment, sports, and individual immigration. The firm was originally set up by my sister Fiona. Then I came over, followed her over from Ireland. The firm has now grown to over 25. We have primarily the team is based in Chicago. We have team members in California, Texas, Memphis, and Pennsylvania. Okay, and yeah, we do a lot of work in the with musicians, entertainers, artists, professional athletes, coaches, and so forth. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today are non-immigrant visa options for international talent, film, TV, theatre, stage. Okay, we're going to focus on the non-immigrant visa options. They are like short-term visas, so employment visas. Okay, we'll talk about what those options are, kind of the requirements for those different visa types, what the application process and kind of timeline looks like, and then some key takeaways. And then we'll have time for questions at the end if anybody has any questions. Okay, these are just some terms that kind of come up a lot in U.S. immigration. USCIS is United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. This is a federal agency. It's a division of Homeland Security, and any petition-based case is adjudicated by USCIS. Non-immigrant visa. Again, as I'd mentioned, it is short-term visas. Generally in U.S. immigration, there's two kind of big distinctions. You've got non-immigrant and immigrant. Non-immigrant is short-term, and then immigrant is like permanent green card holders, permanent residents. Okay, so non-immigrant visa, it is for specific short-term, and they can potentially, depending on what visa type, it can be renewed. Okay, petitioner, that is the person or the organization who actually signs off on the petition and then files it with the government. So you have an attorney who prepares it. The beneficiary is the applicant in most instances, the person who's applying for the visa. And then the petitioner is either the person or the organization who's kind of has the information on the form, signs off on the form, and then files it through an attorney. Okay. RFE, this is after you submitted your case to USCIS, if they request further evidence, an RFE is a request for further evidence. And this is when, you submit a case and then USCIS it does an initial review and then issues a request for evidence where they say, hey, we need more information before we can make a decision. These are becoming a lot more common with this administration. It is what it is. The amount of requests for evidence have increased significantly with this administration. Look, they haven't made a secret of their view on immigration, the immigration system as a whole. They're trying to just clamp down on things. So that's just a result of that is an increase in requests for evidence. Okay, so we'll move on. Obviously, what are the benefits of, bringing in foreign talent? It's like anything really, there's obviously a lot of great talent in the US, but there is a lot of fantastic talent outside. You look at anything really, and when you bring people in, it just improves the quality of everything overall. It kind of enhances everything. So it's the same with film, TV, theatre, same as international with sports and everything. So, collaborating with for US-based actors or producers or directors, when you're kind of open up to international talent, you have access to global talent and audiences. You can expand creative and production opportunities. You also can kind of grow your international market. Access to cross-border financing. festivals, streaming, promotional opportunities. Again, as you said, US market's huge, but like if you open up to the broader global market, it's obviously more beneficial. Okay, we'll talk quickly about misconceptions versus reality. Okay, this is true for film and TV, it's true for music, entertainment, it can be true for sports, and it can be true for just every kind of aspect of immigration law. Immigration issues are a minor part of the production planning. You know, in reality, they're not. They're really important. You know, if you're working with foreign talent, immigration is it's fundamental. If you don't have your visas, petitions approved and visas issued in time, it's going to delay production, schedules, budgets, release timelines, all of that post-production. So that's a big misconception that immigration is only a minor part of the production planning. Okay, another common misconception is international actors, directors, or crew can come in on ESTA, B1, B2, and work on productions, or that they're not getting paid. That is not true. You know, if you're coming in and doing productive employment in the US in almost all circumstances, you need to have the proper work authorization. And failure to do so could potentially result in unauthorized employment, and that's a big, big problem, especially with this administration. But regardless, in any administration, unauthorized employment is a big issue. So you definitely do not want to have that happen. Okay. Short shoots, unpaid projects, or informal collaborations do not require work authorization. Or, I'm not getting paid for it. I'm not getting paid for this, so I don't need a visa. Again, that is not true. Whether you're getting paid or not, that's not determinative of whether you need a work visa. Essentially, if you're doing something that people typically get paid for, whether you're getting paid for or not, it's most likely going to be considered productive employment. And in almost all instances, you need the proper work authorization to do so. So commercial filming, production work, monetized content creation, you'll need work authorization for all of that. Even if it's just a short term, even if you're only in for a few days to do it, you're probably going to need a work visa. Okay. And then, immigration issues only affect the foreign nationals. Not true. It depending on how that foreign national is employed. There can be, I-9 violations, which is a big problem. There can be financial penalties for that. Also you can be kind of, you're a petitioner and you're doing a lot of this work. You can be kind of under a lot more scrutiny with cases going forward if you're not doing things properly. Also, you can have reputational damage. You could miss productions, have to cancel things. So there's just a lot of negative impacts for everybody. I mean, the foreign national is the one that's really going to be impacted, but you don't go unscathed as well. So it's really important to make sure that you're doing everything as you're meant to be. Okay, risk. I think we kind of talked about a lot of this. Yeah, look, if there can be delays, cancelled shoots, your foreign talent mightn't be able to make it into the US. You might have to do some last minute changes, rescheduling. That can kind of increase your costs, and reputational and compliance concerns. So it's just really important if you're working with foreign international talent to make sure you factor in enough time to get their petitions approved and their visa stamps issued. Factor in even more time given the difficult landscape we're seeing right now with immigration law. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so we'll get into it. Non-immigrant visa options. So short-term visa options for TV, movies, theatre, stage, performers. Okay, there's the O1B. That's extraordinary ability. So there's O1B, motion picture and television, and just kind of a specific designation for that. Okay, so that's individuals with extraordinary ability. Then there's the P1B visa for internationally recognized entertainment groups. So this could be good for theatrical groups coming on that are internationally recognized. They could come over as a group under a P1B. P3, culturally unique performers or productions. So if your art form is culturally unique, then you could potentially apply for a P3, and that can be an individual or it can be multiple beneficiaries on that. Okay, then we have an O2 visa. That's for essential support accompanying an O1 beneficiary. So say, if there is an artist, say you're an international talent is like an actor that's coming in, and maybe their hair and makeup can come in as an essential support to them. Or It could be something else, some other sort of role. Their manager could come in with them as an O2. And again, with the P essential support visas, it's the same again. So they're connected. So like with the essential support, they are connected to the primary, whether it's an O2 being connected to an O1B, or whether it's a P1S or P3S essential support connected to either the P1B or the P3. So an important thing to note about that is that the O1B can exist independently of the O2, but you can't have an O2 unless there's an O1. The O2 has to be connected to that. And the same with the P1, the P essential support. There needs to be the primary P1 or P3 to then connect that P essential support visa to. Okay. So the P visa for entertainment groups, tour and productions. Okay. So this is suitable for, entertainment groups, foreign entertainment groups coming to US temporarily to perform or to participate in productions as internationally recognized group. We'll talk about how you show that you're internationally recognized now in a bit. You must be recognized for a sustained and substantial level of achievement in the entertainment field. And at least 75% of the group have to have been performing as part of the group for at least 1 year before you apply for the visa. You can potentially get waivers on that, but rule of thumb is that at least 75% of the group need to have been performing together for at least a year. Okay, so examples where we could look for a P1B, you could file for P1B: touring productions, performance groups, live entertainment acts, internationally recognized ensembles. Okay, so we'll talk about okay, great, we need to show we're internationally recognized. How do we do that? So it's demonstrated by evidence of your receipt of or nomination for significant international awards, prizes for outstanding achievement in the field. So if you can show that, then that shows that you're internationally recognized. If not, then there's a list of criteria that you need to look at, and you need to satisfy at least 3 of these. So performed and will perform as a starring leading entertainment groups in productions or events with a distinguished reputation, as evidenced by critical reviews, advertisement, publications, contracts, and endorsements. So this is one you would use, if you're a theatrical group, if you've been performing at, significant prestigious festivals like the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and other kind of really well-known festivals, or you've featured in a really kind of prestigious production, then you could use that. Again, it's past and future, so you need to show that you have done that, and you also need to show that you've done it again, you will do it again in the future. So obviously it can be hard to predict something, it can be hard to demonstrate things that haven't yet occurred. If you do have stuff lined up, say in the summertime, if you've been booked to kind of perform at festivals or other things, then you can have evidence of that. If not, if nothing's on the line, you can maybe get letters of intent from producers, from festival organizers, from theaters, and so forth, basically saying that they intend to work with you. And we need to show by the preponderance of the evidence, i.e. it's more likely than not, 51%, that you will perform as a starring and leading entertainment group in the future. So if you have a long list of previous performances, it's easier to kind of show that, it's more likely than not you will do this again at some point in the future. Okay, so that's one criteria which would work well. Okay, achieved international recognition and acclaim for outstanding achievements in the field. Major reviews in major newspapers, trade journals, magazines, or other published material. Okay, so this is good. If you have press about you in, you can use regional and national and international media. It can be actual print or it can be online. Variety, Billboard, you're say if you're in Ireland, for example, the Irish Times, the Independent, Rolling Stone covered something, maybe perhaps something like that. So that's kind of what you want. Where there can be issues with Anna talks about you or your group and names you is the best type. The bigger, the better. You can use regional as well, but that should be supplemented with, international thing. Because again, you need to show that you're internationally recognized. So if there's just kind of reporting about one really kind of localized area and that's all you have, there's probably going to be some pushback on that. So, and also media sources from different countries is fantastic as well to have. Okay, so that's another one we regularly use. Okay, the third one, it's quite similar to the first one. So it's past and future. has performed and will perform as a leading or starring group for organizations and establishments. Okay, so the first one was productions and events. So you would kind of look at, festival, if you've been in really good plays or like movies or so forth. And then the next one is organizations and establishments. So this is like if you're like, you've been performed at a really prestigious theater, or it's been like, there's been premiered in really distinguished movie theaters or film festivals and so forth like that. That's kind of how you would show that. Again, past and future. So you need to kind of look at that as well. Okay. And you need, again, you need to show that you have lead or starring role, and then also that the productions or events or the organizations and establishments have a distinguished reputation. So you need to kind of do both of that. Talk about your performance, what you did, and kind of how it was leading or starring or critical, and then talk about where it was. You'd give a history about where you performed. If it's a venue, you would kind of talk about the venue, what's gone on there before, previous performers who have kind of performed there. Okay. Next one is a record of major commercial, critically acclaimed successes. So this works quite well in like obviously movies and theatre and so forth. Ratings, box office, receipts, ticket sales, and other kind of critical reviews in trade journals, major newspapers, etc. So that would be really good if you've like kind of, that's a really common one we use. Any awards you've won as well, you would kind of talk about that. And what else? Another one. So that's one we use a lot as well. The next one is significant recognition from critics, organizations, government agencies, or other recognized experts. So that's where you basically would get an expert letter from recognized experts in the field. If it's in theater, if it's in movie, and they would talk about themselves, their career, and how they can be seen as an expert. And then they talk about you. They talk about some of the specific things you've done or your group has done, and how that you're like internationally recognized. They can also touch on some of the other criteria as well. So like an expert letter can be quite good because it's a standalone criterion and it kind of can potentially strengthen other criteria too. And the final one is has commanded or will command a high salary or other substantial remuneration for services comparable to others similarly situated in the field. So, if you can show that you're, say, in the top 10% pay-wise, then you can use that. It's quite subjective, this criteria. So it's not, we don't use this as often as the other ones that we do at the 5 above. But again, if it applies to you, then it's definitely something you can use. So if you have a contract, you can sign contract with outlining payment terms. You can use that. Tax returns potentially, or you've had previous visas and you have tax returns. You could kind of use that. Evidence of payments. You can kind of use that too. Okay. How long is a P1B valid for? So it's for the time needed to complete event, competition, or performance, but not to exceed 1 year. So it can be the maximum time you get is 1 year, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be, if you're only coming in for a week to do something, then say you're a theatrical group and you're coming in to perform at a festival and it's only a week, you could get it for a week, but no more than a year. Okay. It can be extended for increments of up to a year. If you're in the US, you can extend it. If you're outside, you can apply for a new one. You can get another year again, a maximum of a year, and you can continuously do that. Okay, P2, it's for, there's recognized reciprocal exchange programs. If you are, if you're part of an organization that's covered under these reciprocal exchange programs, and USCIS lists them on its website, you can see what organizations are covered by this. Like I know the American Federation of Musicians and the Federation of Musicians in Canada, they have reciprocal agreements. There's a list of them. Then you can potentially apply for P2. A lot of the times the agencies that are listed there, they can kind of help administer those P2 petitions. Okay, next one, P3. This is the culturally unique one. Okay, so foreign artists, either individually or as a group, that are coming to the US to perform, teach, coach as artists or entertainers, either individually or as part of a group under a culturally unique program. So examples of that would be Irish dancers, flamenco, salsa dancers. If you're performing as a theatrical group and it's culturally unique performance, specific to your home country or area or heritage, you could potentially apply for a P3. Again, it can be either as an individual or it can be as a group. And the idea is you're coming for the purpose of developing, interpreting, representing, coaching, or teaching a unique or traditional ethnic, folk, cultural, musical, theatrical, or artistic performance. And you're going to be participating in cultural event or events which will further the understanding and development of your art form. and it can be a commercial or non-commercial nature. So if you are a performer in an area of culturally unique performance, then the P3 might be quite suitable, might be a good option for you, either individually or if you're part of a group. Again, P3, it's valid for the time needed to complete the event, competition, or performance, but it can't exceed a year, a maximum of a year. Again, it can be extended in the US for up to a year, or you can renew it outside and you can get a maximum of a year, and you can do that indefinitely. Okay. O1B. Okay. So the O1B is for extraordinary ability. O1B in the arts, and then there's the O1B for music, MPTV. So motion picture and television. So there's a specific designation for those who are doing motion picture and television. Okay, so what you need to do is show that you're extraordinary in your field, and you're coming temporarily to work in that area of extraordinary. The arts is distinction. So it's a high level of achievement, extraordinary ability. It's distinction. So high level achievement. So that means basically what they say there is a degree of skill and recognition substantially above that ordinarily encountered, so that you're renowned, leading, or well known. So with the P1B, it's internationally recognized. With the O1B, it is extraordinary ability. So it's a higher level of scrutiny. Okay. The O1B criteria, they're actually very similar to, they're the same as the P1B. It's just that the level of scrutiny applied to them is a lot higher. So I know we kind of ran through them. I ran through previously with the P1B. So it's the same thing. For an O1B, this could be very useful. A lot of actors would come in on O1Bs, TV people, leading roles in theatre, so forth. Really kind of individuals like that could apply for an O1B. Okay, so again, we would look at, so if you've been nominated for or had a major award in your field, so say for an actor, if you've been nominated for an Oscar, or TV person being nominated for an Emmy, theatre being nominated for or received or been awarded a Tony, something like that. By that in and of itself shows that you're extraordinary. If not, you need to look at these 6 criteria. Again, so say for an actor, lead star in critical role, organizations and establishments. So you would look and see, right, what the movies that you've been in, who are the production companies that put that on, where, what film festivals have your movies been shown in, stuff like that, like Cannes Film Festival, the Sundance, so forth like that. You could kind of look at all of those organizations that run that. Okay, the next one then, productions and events. Look at your films, look at the movies that you've been in. If they're really successful movies, then that would obviously be a distinguished production, and you would talk about your role in that as an actor. And events, like the film festivals, again, the actual events that are put on, Cannes, Sundance, other kind of festivals like that. So you would look at that. Another criteria is press. Obviously, if you're a movie, if you're an actor, there's obviously going to be a lot of press about you, about your work, about the movies you've been in. So that, again, the bigger the press, the better. That's another criteria. Expert recognition. This is where you get your experts. So maybe some producers, some directors, some movie critics talking about you, talking about your roles that you've done and how you were really important to those productions. Major commercial or critically acclaimed successes. Again, talk about any awards you've won, box office rating, talking about the gross ticket sales for movies, if you won any awards individually, if the movies won awards, so forth like that. And then high salary. If you can show that you're in the top 10% salary-wise, then you could use that too. Again, so remember, you just need to have 3 of these criteria. If you can get 3 of them, you can show that you meet the extraordinary ability, or if you've been nominated for or received a major award, then that's, you don't need to show these criteria if you have that. Okay, how long is an O1B valid for? So the O1B, again, it's the period of time determined to be necessary to accomplish the event or activity, but it can be for a maximum of 3 years. So the P1B, the P3 is 1 year, up to 1 year. The O1B, you can get up to 3 years. And if you're in the US on an O1B and you want to extend it from within the US, you can get 1 year extensions. You can keep extending that if you show that the event has been extended by a year. Also, you can apply for a new O1B and you can get an additional 3 years on that. One thing I'll say about P and the O visas, whatever time you're requesting on those visas, you need to have evidence of what you're going to be doing. So, if you're working on a movie, you'll have kind of rough dates of, filming, production, post-production, once it's kind of ready to go, then you've obviously got your promotion, you're going to be going around promoting it, so forth like that. And then, if there's festivals you're doing that circuit as well, and so forth. So you'll get a bit of time on that. You can also get letters of intent from production houses, from, agencies, so forth, other people in the industry saying that they want to work with you, and so forth. But like whatever time you're requesting, you need to have evidence of what you're going to be doing. If you're applying for an L1B and you have one project and it's set to be 2 months, 3 months, say 4 months even, for filming, production, post-production, and then like some promotion of it afterwards. If that's all you have, you only have evidence of 4 months worth of work, and you don't put anything else with that case, and you file it, you are almost certainly going to get a request for evidence. Remember, we talked about that at the start. They're going to push back and say, hey, we need more evidence of what you're doing. They label it speculative employment, and almost certainly you'll get a request for evidence. So it's very important that you show you meet whatever it is, whether it's extraordinary ability or internationally recognition, and also you're going to show that you have work lined up, for the requested period of time. As I said, any work that's confirmed, include that. Contracts, any signed contracts, include that. You can get letters of intent from people saying that they are going to work with you. If you have an agent, get a letter from them confirming that they are actively pursuing opportunities for you in the US, an itinerary, sample of itinerary of what you kind of do on a monthly basis. If you have like festivals, whatever, like if you do have confirmed itineraries, include that. And like, again, as I said, a projected itinerary. The more evidence you have of what you're doing, the better. That's important. Okay, the essential support again. So with the P, you need to show that you're an essential part of the primary P entertainer's performance, and that work you're doing cannot be readily performed by a US worker. So, again, if it's, if you are an actor, say, you have somebody that you practice your lines with and you're really familiar with them, you could bring that over. Hair and makeup, you could maybe bring them over to a manager. You could bring them over if you need a translator. Maybe you could bring them over too if you have maybe if you have a fitness coach who is, really knows your specific regimens and so forth like that, a nutritionist, you could kind of bring them over as essential support. Again, the limitations on it is that, the essential support, it is connected to the primary P. You cannot work independently of that primary P, and there obviously has to be a primary P to be able to file the essential support. How long is it valid for? Typically, you're only going to get it for whatever the duration of the primary P is. So if it's a year, you should get a year too. It'll be connected with it. If it's 6 months, you'll get that too. Okay, O2, again, it's similar. You need to show that you're an integral part of their performance and that you have critical skills and experience working with the O1. That's the same with the P. You need to show that you have essential skills and you're critical to their performance and that you have prior experience working with them. And that, this work can't be readily performed by a US worker. So again, same sort of, categorization of support workers as I kind of just previously mentioned. The O2, same thing. It's connected to the O1, so you generally would get issued for the same duration as the primary visa. Okay. Process timelines. Okay. So the O and the P's, you need a petitioner. You need a US-based petitioner. So that's the person, the individual or the organization who will provide their individual information or their company information on the forms. They sign off on the case. The attorney prepares it and they'll sign off on it, and then they'll file that case through a US attorney. Again, so on the film and TV side of things, it could be a production company, a studio, could be an agency, could be if you're booked with like a TV show, that's all you're doing. It could be that that organization you could file as your employer. But a lot of the times with P's and O's, we see an agent petitioner, not like an agent in the sense for the entertainment side sense, but actually like from a US immigration point of view. So it's kind of slightly different. And that's essentially an agent petitioner is essentially an individual or a company who agrees to file a US petition on your behalf. And it can kind of be structured in kind of a few different ways. You can have an agent performing a function of employer. You can have an agent for multiple employers. That's if you have multiple engagements, you can get an agent who will agree to file the case. And then you kind of group together all your multiple employers and they kind of authorize that case to be filed. And then you're able to work for all of those different employers under this one petition. So it gives you a bit more flexibility. Okay. Again, we talked about evidence of planned US work. You need to include as much evidence of what you're going to be doing as possible. So production schedules, film itineraries, contracts, deal memos, call sheets, promotional plan, distribution agreements, so forth. Consultation letters, very important. You need a consultation letter for O's and P's. If there is like a labor union or a management organization, you need to get one from that. Actors, you're going to have to get, a letter from SAG-AFTRA. If you're a producer, you're going to have to get it from the AMPTP. If you're kind of a crew, an essential support crew member, or if you're doing one as a cinematographer or something like that, you're gonna have to go to IATSA, get something there. It really is, it'll depend on what your kind of field is, but you need to get a consultation. If there's no suitable management organizations or labor unions, in lieu of a consultation letter, you can get an advisory opinion from like a US based expert. You could do that. Well, that's important. You need to get that letter before you file your case, and then you need to submit it with your case to USCIS. Supporting evidence. So obviously, you will, in your petition, you're going to talk about how you have that major award or nomination, or you're going to show how you meet at least 3 of those criteria. So you obviously need to have evidence of all of that. That needs to be included with your case. And those types of evidence will depend on what criteria you're actually going with. Supporting evidence. Okay, so as we said, for the O1, and we did talk about this earlier, so we can kind of go through this. For O1B, P1B, if you've participated, if you've been acting in like notable productions, like plays, movies, TV shows, or like really prestigious festivals, you would talk about that. Press coverage, interviews, like any of the kind of the big entertainment websites, blogs, magazines, online or paper. As well, streaming ratings, box office success, awards, nominations, recommendation letters, the expert letters we talked about, contract, deal memos, evidence compensation, and industry standing. If you can show you're in the top 10%, great. You could go for the salary. Essential support. You need to show evidence that you are an integral part of the primary performance. So your job description. You also need to provide evidence of your prior experience working with that primary beneficiary, start date, and then evidence of the prior work. So paychecks, invoices, photographs, other things like that. If there's other documentary evidence showing that, you need to include that. That's for the O2 or the P1S or the P3S. Processing timelines. Okay, attorney case preparation. It typically takes, it says 2 to 3 months here. I would say 3 to 4 months to prepare cases. It's assuming you have all of the documentation, signed form agreements and so forth. It is possible to expedite it to get a faster processing time, but it's more money. Just plan for 3+ months to get the case prepped and filed. Adjudication. It depends, if you're going with regular processing, it takes as long as it takes. I'm sorry, classic lawyer answer here, not answering something, but really it just depends. We've seen a regular process case sometimes getting approved and, as fast as premium processing in 2-3 weeks. We've seen some that have gone on over a year. It really depends. Like USCIS has their estimated processing times online, and that changes from month to month. Sometimes it could say, what they say is 80% of these cases will be processed within 6 months. You could look again a week later, it could be gone to 8 months. You could look again a week later, it could be down to 2 months. So your regular, it's very uncertain. Premium, this is where you pay an extra expedited filing fee, and then the government's on the clock. So they have 15 business days from when they receive the case to give an update, to either approve the case, issue a request for evidence, or take some other form of action. But that's like $3,000 a case, $2,965. Just that filing fee, just to get that expedited service. And what we've seen recently is that they've been busting the premium clock, i.e., they haven't met the 15-day deadline, and technically they're meant to give you a refund of the premium fee if they don't do something within that 15 business day. So if you're in a hurry, which typically you always are in the music, sports and entertainment space, and you have the money, I would highly recommend filing with premium processing. Okay, so then once your case is approved, we need to move on to the next steps. Unless if you're Canadian, once the case is approved, you can use if you're a Canadian citizen, you can use your approval notice and you can come enter the US with that. Fantastic. All other instances, you need to actually then schedule an appointment with the US Embassy to go in and have an interview and get a visa stamp put in your passport. Again, typically the embassies are can be long waits, but they're usually pretty good with, sports entertainment for granting expedited appointments. But again, you're still looking at a few weeks to get that, and then you got to go in, have your interview, give your passport over. If there's no delays, visa stamps can be issued in 2, 3, 4 days. You could go into admin processing, which could delay things by several weeks, and they may refuse the expedite request because of capacity, and you could be that. So that could take anywhere from a few weeks to a couple of months more, maybe, to get the actual visa stamp. Okay, so yeah, as we say, really a minimum, if you need to be in the US, you should be like 6 months before that date is when you should be, looking to get a visa prepped and filed. 6 months it's tight. It's a tight timeline. Okay, key takeaways. Work authorization, it is very important. It is not an afterthought. At least it shouldn't be an afterthought. It is critical for getting international talent, actors, producers, directors, cinematographers, to the support crew, essential support to the US. It is very important that everybody has the proper work authorization. Timing, it's very important. You need to start the process earlier. If you think you're starting early, go back a few months even earlier and start it. Timing, if there's delays, it can really impact everything. It can really mess up production schedules and budgets. Starting the process as early as possible helps to avoid some of these costly delays and issues. Also, you may be able to file without premium processing. Probably unlikely with the delays we're seeing right now, but you never know. If things kind of go back to kind of what they were before, you might be able to file it without premium. And if that's, if you're filing a petition for like an actor and then some support people, that's like $6,000 savings there just by not having to file with premium processing. Okay, so early planning, plan early. Production teams should also, the strategy when you're identifying and kind of selecting your team, you need to kind of factor in the immigration. It's like, okay, look, this is who we want to work with. Okay, what kind of, we should talk to, we should kind of look at those visa options. How would they look like? Okay, do you want to bring some crew over? Okay, how are we going to get them there? Are they going to be connected to the P1B or the O1? Maybe it's a director and they work with like lighting and sets and all of these, making sure that they've worked together previously. That all should be, immigration should be at the forefront. It should be in the initial conversation. So you should be looking at this. Do's and don'ts. This is probably pretty self-explanatory. If you have questions, which, with the way immigration is right now, almost everybody does, make sure you go to a reputable immigration attorney and a firm. Immigration, not all immigration firms work in sports, entertainment, in film and TV, in music and so forth. So make sure you're going to a firm that knows what they're talking about. Okay. Factor in immigration from the very start. Don't leave it kind of as an afterthought. It should be in the forefront from the very start when you're kind of planning things. Okay. Try to familiarize yourself. If you look online, USCIS, they have an online policy manual and they provide information on all the different visa types. You can look at that and you can kind of see. And just make sure make sure everything is being done above board and you have evidence of, all your collaboration, you're documented properly. Okay. To don'ts, it's not someone else's problem. If you're working with international talent, you need to be aware about it and that it can impact you. Okay. Again, don't kind of leave it to the last minute as an afterthought. It can really impact things. It can cause a lot of problems. Do not go into chat groups and look and see, take advice from chat groups. While some people may have right advice, more often than not, you're getting, half-truths and like false information. So, and just because somebody did something before and got away with it or it worked, does not mean that is the way it is done. So talk to an immigration. You want advice? Talk to an immigration lawyer. Okay. And then, just kind of, it's always best to try and make sure that the work authorization is approved before you announce collaborations online. Or, you can say that you're, excited to work with this person pending, obtaining the proper work authorization. And that's always just a good thing to keep in mind. Okay, I'm going to open it up now to see if anybody has any questions. I know it was a lot of information, a lot to digest there. But look, the big takeaway, I guess, is international talent almost always needs a work visa to come to the US and work. Work visas are difficult to get. They are timely and can be expensive. So make sure whoever you're working with gets the right visa, and make sure that you give yourself enough time to get the visa in time for them to get their visa stamps if they need to, so they can arrive on time, so there's no delays or cancellations. And stay out of chat rooms. More often than not, you're going to get wrong information there. Okay, I don't know if anybody has any questions. Okay, so how early should production start the immigration process when hiring an international talent? Well, look, it should start at this, as I kind of mentioned, it should be in your that should be one of your initial considerations, immigration. You should be from the very start. Again, I would like no less than 6 months, and ideally, you're giving yourself more than that. Just give yourself as much time as possible. Immigration should be, especially with the immigration landscape right now, how difficult it is with this administration. You got to factor in extra time for requests for evidence, potential issues at embassies. Individuals in film and television can have like opinions, and it can be out there, and that can cause issues and delay things. So, give yourself more time. The more time you give, the better. Okay. And look, if you or anybody needs help in this space, please feel free to reach out to us. That's our website there, mcenteelaw.com. You can find us on, you can email us at info@mcenteelaw.com. We have a lot of experience in this space. We've got a great team, some of the best, O1s, P1s, EB1A lawyers in the country. And we're regularly working in this space. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. I know it's only Thursday afternoon now, but want to wish everybody a happy, great weekend. Thanks for taking the time to tune in. I hope this was helpful. I hope it kind of gave you some insights as to kind of the visa options for entertainers, performers. And look, if you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.